Alright, good afternoon. I'm just getting set here and we'll wait for a few more people. We will be doing our discussion for chapter 7. Just grabbing my stuff. No, sorry, chapter 6. Our discussion for chapter 6. Got a research topic to share as well from Nicole. Wait a couple of minutes. Amber, Jesse, Gabriel, that's about it so far. Unless there's people that I can't see. Sorry, it isn't Jesse, it's Krista. You have the same dark hair. It's the only explanation I got. Thanks, Val, and snarls are quite different. Okay. Nice to have a few more people. A lot of the people that, rather a few of the people that volunteered aren't there yet for this discussion. Some of you are though, but we'll hang on for a bit here, another minute or two, then we'll get going. The plan for today is to do the discussion for chapter 6 and then assign you some discussion topics for chapter 7 and read chapter 7. And then we'll do the chapter 7 discussion on Thursday. There have now been 2 responses assigned for night. There'll be a third one coming up on Thursday. There'll be 4 altogether, just in case anybody has missed that. 4 responses. So they're longer, but there's not as many of them. Okay, so a pretty good light to it. We get going here. Det was none to it, så en kommer passa det light nyt. First of all, actually no, I'll do it for the people that are here, and whoever is not here is going to have to get it from a recording or from a classmate. I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, housekeeping stuff. Call it calendar stuff, if you will. So let me just get a calendar under the document camera here. So today is the 5th, May the 5th. So this week on Thursday we'll be assigning the 3rd night response. And next week there are 3 classes. So we should definitely wrap up night next week and maybe even start some new stuff on Friday. The following week only has 2 ELA classes. So we have Victoria Day on the Monday, Ascension Day on the Thursday, but that affects Canadian history, not ELA. So, but anyways, probably by May the 15th we'll be done with night and moving on to other stuff. I may allow some working time on the 15th. We'll see how vi always get, or we'll start with some new stuff. And the new stuff will just consist of We'll be reading a few articles and short stories, and I will be assigning free writes based on them. So hier's Claude Hamanuch Masai Do, Dovu Matzwa classes. So gamma so, May 13 would be our last day doing night, which would bring us to May 15 for starting the new stuff that I still have left with the free writes. So that leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 classes in May once we're done with night. Und dadurch will ich nach stoppen. May the 28th is when I want to stop. Dadurch sind die Pfingsten, der gleiche Weekend though. Let's get into June now. So if we get our last ELA class in on May the 28th, okay, na sein do die Pfingsten cut that weekend. So that's a longer weekend, wo casual wird sein bis in Wednesday. So I'd like to have ELA done before then. Simply because the ELA course has more work, and I want you to be able to have enough time to get everything done. So if we can do this, if we can be wrapped up by May the 28th, that's my plan, is to get that done. Und nach des nu, if we look at that, the assignment deadline is June 19. And that's going to leave you with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's going to leave you with nearly 2 weeks until the deadline, and that's exactly what I want. I think you should have about 2 weeks. 13 days. 13 school days, I might add. That's not even counting the weekends. And of those 13 school days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them are ELA days. So again, I want to wrap up by May the 28th and give you that extra time to get your ELA done. I do not believe in dragging an ELA course out. I think it needs to end in a timely fashion because ELA has so much work that everybody needs to do. And especially, while here it's a novel study DM that involves some pretty heavy writing. So, that is the plan, to be wrapped up by May the 28th. Und die werden hier schon ein Ding verhassen. Die werden es nicht extenden bei mehr wie ein Do. Like, in other words, Do is May 28th, organize a longer weekend. The most I'm going to do is maybe have a class after Wednesday, June 3. That's going to be the absolute last day, but my goal is May 28th. But I promise to not have any classes past June 3. That's just not the way I operate. In June, you got to have time to get work done. So, with that, let's leave that aside for now. If there's a question hump about it, you can email me. Pass it on to anybody who wasn't here, if you would. Basically, the last we're working on towards wrapping up the course by May 28. So that you have roughly 13 school days of working time left in June before the final deadline. Pass the message on to whoever missed it. Okay, our volunteers for the first topic were Amber and Jody. The Amber is do it. Jody is not do it. Only Gabe is there. So we'll see what we can do with this. So the topic is, pathos is an experience of life or a work of art that stirs up pity, sympathy, or sorrow. Choose one of the following and explain it as an example of pathos. Odidortia volunteered. So I think we're covered. So the Amber, you volunteered for the first one, the situation of Rabbi Eliyahu. What can you tell us about that?
Ich pity der Vater von Mrs. Sasson gesuchen und like give sympathy and sorrow towards him for when I ausfigured von er weet ausfiguren, was ook het doen. Ik was het maar weet, aber ich pity des son auch, because I'm sure er wird auch to regretten, was ook het doen.
Yeah, man kan inte niet judge for that decision more, right? But yeah, I know exactly. I know what you mean. Dorothea, can you be the violin playing Juliek? Any comments on that one?
That symphony aufgebracht in mir, because it was basically, even though Sancho does all his doorgangen, it was all he could think about. It was all that mattered to him, even at that point, to Juliek, and he basically died playing violin. It was just powerful.
Former students have said this as well, and it's something that I believed from the first day I read the book. It's the most powerful part of the entire book. I mean, there's more powerful stuff coming up, but that's just incredible. Jordan, are you with us today?
Yeah.
Okay, can you, any comments on this one from you?
In a world of murder and darkness, the violin could have been a warm flash of what once was. The boy who played the violin, I think, played it because he was being flooded with sorrow. He was playing his life, or how he was stripped of it, as a final coerced acceptance.
I think that's a pretty in-depth comment. So in other words, he's trying to find that last bit of joy. Was probably about sterben. A lot of people know that this is it. Like, das kennt man von älterer Leid. Is it verlängert noch mit sterben. You come, du was du wärst. There's that feeling that you get, and he probably knew it. And that's how he chose to go. Is he chose to go with at least try to have some joy, as Dorothea put it. Okay, for number 2, we had Kristen, Elijah, Nathan, Jaden. And it says, describe Ellie's motivation to continue marching, to keep on living. Kristen, you want to start us off?
I mean, while since I marched, he kept telling himself that I'm a machine. I can keep going, I can keep running, and I won't never stop.
Sometimes you can get outside your body and just keep going for that extra edge. I know Ivaz is a lousy comparison, but some of you have probably had this happen when you were playing sports and you were tired, and that extra shot that you tell yourself to just keep on going, to not stop. I know it's not a good comparison, but it's the only one I can come up with right now. Elijah does tiny do it, so I guess we'll move along. Nathan, what have you got for this one?
His motivation is a photo reason, because as you get out, like, what's my dad gonna do without me? And basically said dad is never any clue that Nickel stopped because dad hitting an imp and kept going.
I like that you said that. That's a lot of times, the people that you're close to, they keep you going, whether they encourage you or whether you just want to be there for them. A lot of times they keep you going. Jaden, have you got one for us?
Så vi besøgte Nathan Søberg, så vi og train. I saw a photo, but he kept going, so I really covered his coat to grind aufgehen wollen. Så det er så old for det til det is und kunne wollte push on.
Yeah. That's interesting as well. Especially, these days. And it's not that we don't work hard. We do work hard. But life used to be a lot harder. And just that's a good example. And sometimes it's a good idea to think about what life was like for people that came before us. Even the science actually made door. A lot of times it was more physical work hinterweiter as behind, and there's still plenty of physical work today. But hinterweiter is mehr gewesen. Okay, our last one, we had Austin, who's not here. We had Josie Wingham. Please do it. Nope. Johannes, Julian, so let's do it. Our volunteers aren't here. Well, some of you are in luck. You get a chance to earn a check mark if you have a comment to make. And this is a general question. It's not just about chapter 6, so some of you might be able to chip something in here. So far in the book, night has several different meanings. And I said describe 2 of them, I'll accept 1. So if anybody wants to make a comment for what kind of a meaning does night have so far in this book. There's a lot of reasons why this book is called Night. If you can come up with one meaning of night in this book. Anyone? We'll just open it up.
Never give up hope.
Exactly. Even though es ist finster, things aren't looking very well. It's a good one. Anything else? I'm going to give you a hint. See if anybody takes it. Boom, 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 boom. Feel free to chip in while I'm looking this up. Yes?
I come.
Go
all
ahead.
the Jews. See, all the Jews went all to those concentration camps, and they treated them very badly. It's just like here in Canada when the government forced the Aboriginal children to go to residential schools, and they treated them badly there too.
And that was night for them, I might add. Can anybody find the description of night on page 34? Whoever can find that and read it for us, I can give you a check mark. Page 34. Go ahead.
Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp that turned my life into one long night 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the small faces of the children whose bodies I saw transformed into smoke under a silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget the nocturnal silence that deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never shall I forget those things, even were I condemned as long as God himself. Never.
There we are. He uses night. He mentions night 3 times. He also uses the word nocturnal, which is also the same as night. Night, a long night, 7 times sealed. Amazing. Okay. Thank you, Amber. Now there's a reference on page 47. If anybody can identify, he doesn't mention night specifically, but it's right there at the beginning of page 47. It's right at the beginning of a chapter. If anybody can say what I'm talking about, I'll give you a check mark. Gesundheit. No?
Just the extra sentence.
Mm-hmm. You want to read it?
The camp looked as though it had been through an epidemic, empty and dead.
Exactly.
Only a few well-dressed inmates were wandering between the blocks.
Mm-hmm. Whatever well-dressed means, I don't know even. Every time I read that, I was like, okay, what? Well, what was it like to be well-dressed in this situation? But anyways, yes, empty and dead, night. Okay, we'll leave it there. Got some more topics for chapter 7. Chapter 7 is very short, but we won't do the discussion today because I want you to have time to think about it. We will simply end class whenever we finish reading chapter 7. Oh, you've dovas to share for the Nicole. Almost forgot. She did a brief research topic on the Holocaust, Nicole Waldner. You will just strength sharing, then we'll do our discussion. You can choose discussion points for chapter 7. The Holocaust is something that I will never understand. I will never understand how a man can go and take innocent people away from their homes and their lives and make them work in factories. The Jews went through things that we would not wish on our worst enemy. They got treated so bad that they didn't even have the strength to get back up. People had to help them get up. When a soldier had a bad day, he would take it out on a Jew. We can't possibly imagine what they went through in the camps. The Holocaust went down in the history of the world as one of the horrible and saddest things that ever happened. The Jews always wondered why this would happen to them. What have they done to deserve such treatment? That's a summary. That's an effective summary, I think. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but an effective summary sometimes can be good. All right, so we checked yo. Before we get to the chapter 7 discussion topics, vil jeg henke kollason hvor det site on my checklist. So Amber and Dorothea, you have chipped in a lot lately. You've both got one more to get. Nathan, you're good. Elijah, well, you're not there and you missed yours today. You still haven't. Jesse has 3. Kristen got 1 today. Gabe got his 3rd one today. Jody has 2. Nicole has 1. Again, you can email me. Okay? Jordan, you've got 5 and you're continuing to contribute, as are Nathan and Jaden and Emmanuel, so that's good. Keep it up, guys. Johannes and Nicole, well, Nicole has 2, Johannes has 1. The Homewood crew, Amy 2, Jessica 3, Joni 3, Julian. Did you ever show up today, Julian, because you volunteered, but you weren't there today? No? Okay, you'll have to get some more checks, though. Austin has 4, he needs to get 1 more. Jaden, Manuel, Ashley all have 5 checks. Isaiah has none, Mark has 3. Emily, you have 5, Josie has 3. Okay, and again, you can keep on contributing even if you do have 5 check marks. Why not be engaged? Okay, here we have, I'm going to go over them. I have 4 topics that you can choose, 4 discussion topics. Chapter 7, again, nice quotes. I'm going to read them all through first, and then you can pick. What was meant by Greenwald disconnected. What was the phrase? Oh, you're back. Good. What was meant by the phrase grave digger? Identify the real life flashback in chapter 7. This is a good one. Why does Ellie include the incident with Meyer Katz? And then suggest 2 or 3 ways that Ellie's relationship with his father has changed since the beginning of this narrative. And the narrative is, of course, the entire book, the whole story. In case anybody wasn't sure. So, any volunteers? What was meant by the phrase grave digger? Still need a check mark or 2. Make sure you... was ist das gewesen? Jordan. Okay. One or two other people. Doesn't really matter if you say something similar. It's kind of a big deal. Anyone else? It's not what you think it means, as you can probably imagine. Okay, you can still pick one. That's fine. We'll move along. Number 2, real life flashback in chapter 7. Nobody for number 2?
Die Josie kan number 2 home.
Okay, good. Anyone else? Has du comment mocht ze mogen verhind, koopt ze mogen verhind Josie because your name was down? You could still do it. And do those ready husnakin as though once Medova go home, it does, you could quickly do that. If you've got something. Why does Ellie include the incident with Meyer Katz? Number 3, anyone?
Hey, kan ich to don't
Yes,
Sorry.
certainly. 3, anyone? It's an incident, quite the interesting incident in the book. And then you just describe the incident and say something about why you think he included it. Isn't it the hardest thing to do in case anybody thinks that? Dorothea, recht?
Jo.
Okay. Und letzter. Suggest 2 or 3. Du kannst doch zwei haben, es macht nichts.
Nein, ich bin die Amber, nicht die Dorothea.
Okay, got it. I thought it was the person who was motioning, which was Dorothea. This makes sense. So, 2 or 3 ways that Ellie's relationship with his father has changed since the beginning of the narrative. So, anywhere from 1, 2, 3, or 4. Well, it's for 2 how much it's light, but can we get another person for the under? Especially if you could still use a check mark or 2. Anyone? Going once, twice, 3 times. Josie, did you have anything to say for topic number 3 for chapter 6? So far in the book, night has several different meanings. Describe 2 of them. When there was host, go ahead. If not, just let me know.
This is actually going.
Okay, fair enough. She already went to read, I guess. Okay, now good. So if I go home at about 10 after 2, that's chapter 7 is very short. Then we'll discuss these on Thursday, and then I will be assigning the next written response, which will be response number 3. And I talked a little bit about the timeline of the course right at the start. If you missed it, you'll have to get the recording or get information from somebody else, because I'm not going to be going through it again. All right, let's read the chapter, and then that'll be it for today.
Pressed tightly against one another. In an effort to resist the cold, our heads empty and heavy, our brains a whirlwind of decaying memories. our minds numb with indifference. Here or elsewhere, what did it matter? Die today or tomorrow or later? The night was growing longer, never ending. When at last a grayish light appeared on the horizon, it revealed a tangle of human shapes, heads sunk deeply between the shoulders, crouching, piled one on top of the other, like a cemetery covered with snow. In the early dawn light I tried to distinguish between the living and those who were no more, but there was barely a difference. My gaze remained fixed on someone who, eyes wide open, stared into space. His colorless face was covered with a layer of frost and snow. My father had huddled near me, draped in his blanket, shoulders laden with snow. And what if he were dead as well? I called out to him, no response. I would have screamed if I could have. He was not moving. Suddenly, the evidence overwhelmed me. There was no longer any reason to live, any reason to fight. The train stopped in an empty field. The abrupt halt had wakened a few sleepers. They stood, looking around, startled. Outside, the SS walked by, shouting, "Throw out all the dead! Outside, all the corpses!" The living were glad. They would have more room. Volunteers began the task. They touched those who had remained on the ground. "Here's one. Take him." The volunteers undressed him and eagerly shared his garments. Then 2 grave diggers grabbed him by the head and feet and threw him from the wagon like a sack of flour. There was shouting all around. "Come on, here's another. My neighbor, he's not moving." I woke from my apathy only when 2 men approached my father. I threw myself on his body. He was cold. I slapped him. I rubbed his hands, crying, "Father, Father, wake up. They're going to throw you outside." His body remained inert. The 2 gravediggers had grabbed me by the neck. "Leave him alone. Can't you see that he's dead?" "No," I yelled. "He's not dead. Not yet." And I started to hit him harder and harder. At last, my father half opened his eyes. They were glassy. He was breathing faintly. "You see?" I cried. The 2 men went away. 20 corpses were thrown from our wagon. Then the train resumed its journey, leaving in its wake, in a snowy field in Poland, hundreds of naked orphans without a tomb. We received no food. We lived on snow. It took the place of bread. The days resembled the nights, and the nights left in our souls the dregs of their darkness. The train rolled slowly, often halted for a few hours, and continued. It never stopped snowing. We remained lying on the floor for days and nights, one on top of the other, never uttering a word. We were nothing but frozen bodies. Our eyes closed. We merely waited for the next stop to unload our dead. There followed days and nights of traveling. Occasionally, we would pass through German towns. Usually, very early in the morning, German laborers were going to work. They would stop and look at us without surprise. One day when we had come to a stop, a worker took a piece of bread out of his bag and threw it into a wagon. There was a stampede. Dozens of starving men fought desperately over a few crumbs. The worker watched the spectacle with great interest. Years later, I witnessed a similar spectacle in Aden. Our ship's passengers amused themselves by throwing coins to the natives who dove to retrieve them. An elegant Parisian lady took great pleasure in this game. When I noticed 2 children desperately fighting in the water, one trying to strangle the other, I implored the lady, "Please don't throw any more coins." "Why not?" said she. "I like to give charity." In the wagon where the bread had landed, a battle had ensued. Men were hurling themselves against each other, trampling, tearing at and mauling each other. Beasts of prey unleashed animal hate in their eyes. An extraordinary vitality possessed them, sharpening their teeth and nails. A crowd of workmen and curious passers-by had formed all along the train. They had undoubtedly never seen a train with this kind of cargo. Soon, pieces of bread were falling into the wagons from all sides, and the spectators observed these emaciated creatures ready to kill for a crust of bread. A piece fell into our wagon. I decided not to move. Anyway, I knew that I would not be strong enough to fight off dozens of violent men. I saw, not far from me, an old man dragging himself on all fours. He had just detached himself from the struggling mob. He was holding one hand to his heart. At first I thought he had received a blow to his chest. Then I understood. He was hiding a piece of bread under his shirt. With lightning speed he pulled it out and put it to his mouth. His eyes lit up. A smile, like a grimace, illuminated his ashen face, and was immediately extinguished. A shadow had lain down beside him, and this shadow threw itself over him. Stunned by the blows, the old man was crying, "Mayor, my little Mayor, don't you recognize me? You're killing your father. I have bread for you too, for you too." He collapsed, but his fist was still clutching a small crust. He wanted to raise it to his mouth, but the other threw himself on him. The old man mumbled something, groaned, and died. Nobody cared. His son searched him, took the crust of bread, and began to devour it. He didn't get far. 2 men had been watching him. They jumped him. Others joined in. When they withdrew, there were 2 dead bodies next to me, the father and the son. I was 16. In our wagon, there was a friend of my father's, Mayor Katz. He had worked as a gardener in Buna, and from time to time had brought us some green vegetables. Less undernourished than the rest of us, detention had been easier on him. Because he was stronger than most of us, he had been put in charge of our wagon. On the 3rd night of our journey, I woke up with a start when I felt 2 hands on my throat trying to strangle me. I barely had time to call out, "Father!" Just that one word. I was suffocating. But my father had awakened and grabbed my aggressor. Too weak to overwhelm him, he thought of calling Mayor Katz. Come quickly, someone is strangling my son." In a few moments, I was freed. I never did find out why the stranger had wanted to strangle me. But days later, Mayor Katz told my father, "Shlomo, I am getting weak. My strength is gone. I won't make it." "Don't give in." My father tried to encourage him. "You must resist. Don't lose faith in yourself." But Mayor Katz only groaned in response. "I can't go on, Shlomo. I can't help it. I can't go on." My father took his arm, and Mayor Katz, the strong one, the sturdiest of us all, began to cry. His son had been taken from him during the first selection, but only now was he crying for him. Only now did he fall apart. He could not go on. He had reached the end. On the last day of our journey, a terrible wind began to blow, and the snow kept falling. We sensed that the end was near, the real end. We could not hold out long in this glacial wind, this storm. Somebody got up and yelled, "We must not remain sitting. We shall freeze to death. Let's get up and move." We all got up. We all pulled our soaked blankets tighter around our shoulders, and we tried to take a few steps to shuffle back and forth in place. Suddenly, a cry rose in the wagon, the cry of a wounded animal. Someone had just died. Others, close to death, imitated his cry, and their cries seemed to come from beyond the grave. Soon everybody was crying, groaning, moaning, cries of distress hurled into the wind and the snow. The lament spread from wagon to wagon. It was contagious. And now hundreds of cries rose at once, the death rattle of an entire convoy with the end approaching. All boundaries had been crossed. Nobody had any strength left, and the night seemed endless. Mayor Katz was moaning, "Why don't they just shoot us now?" That same night we reached our destination. It was late. The guards came to unload us. The dead were left in the wagons. Only those who could stand could leave. Mayor Katz remained on the train. The last day had been the most lethal. We had been 100 or so in this wagon. 12 of us left it, among them my father and myself. We had arrived in Buchenwald.
Your conference is scheduled to end in 2 minutes. Your conference is now over. Goodbye.